Hi, friend. Niclas here, and welcome to another episode. On the show today, we have the guitarist, composer, and music producer, Mark Lettieri. And you might know him from the band Snarky Puppy, where he lays down some killer guitar tracks. And Mark also releases his own music and recently released Deep, the Baritone Session Volume 2, which is such a killer. I don't know how to explain it. Just a killer, deep, funky ass record, which I think you should go check out right away. Especially the first two tracks, they're awesome. I think the names are. Let me just check the names really quick of the two first tracks. Red Dwarf and Magnetar. I mean, those two tracks are awesome. And a funny, quick story about the baritone session. I didn't realize he used the baritone on his album, but that's what the album is called, obviously. But it didn't register with me for some reason. But that's why you get this thick sound, and it's really cool hearing a baritone being used in a funk style album. So if you haven't heard that album, go check it out right away. It's damn killer. But it's a real pleasure having Mark on the show. And please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, whether that's on YouTube or Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you're listening or watching this show. Your support really matters. I really appreciate that. And also, before we get into the interview, please check out the Audio Tribe email list. There's a link to that in the description below. So if you want exclusive access to interviews before the public, just sign up to the email list. It's free. Enter your name and email address and you have joined. But that's it. Let's get into the interview with Mark Lettieri. So please enjoy.
Okay, cool. I just turned off my Wi-Fi, so now I'm on the Ethernet, so it should hopefully won't have any weirdness.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Awesome.
Cool, man.
Well, again, Mark, thank you. Really
Yeah,
appreciate
man.
it.
For sure.
I was listening to your latest album, the Baritone Session. Like the songs, the two first songs, like Red Dwarf and Magnetar. I mean, both of those songs, man, they kick ass, man. I mean,
Thanks.
every time I listen to them, I can't sit still.
Oh, right on. Good. That's the point.
Yeah.
Supposed to make you either dance or drive above the speed limit.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if I had a car, I would definitely drive
Oh, there
above
you
the
go. Or
speed
maybe
limit.
a bicycle or scooter or something.
Yeah, no,
Cool.
it's awesome. And a funny thing for me at least was I was listening to the album. I was like, oh, damn, how did it make it sound so thick? Then I realized, oh, the album is actually called Baritone. And the
There you
first time
go.
I saw it, it's like, oh, I read it as brass, like the
Oh,
brass
okay.
session. I don't know why I did that, but
Yeah,
I
no
did for
problem.
some
There's a
reason.
baritone saxophone on one song actually. So
Oh
you're
yeah,
not totally wrong.
right. No, but anyhow, so yeah, I just noticed. Oh, it's actually called the baritone, and it's like, oh, damn, he's using a baritone guitar. Obviously,
Yep.
that's where the sound is coming from, and
That's it.
that's mind blowing to me, man. I never thought you can use a baritone like that. Like, I always thought of it like Mastodon use
Oh,
baritones, for
sure.
example.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's kind of an untapped resource in terms of funk and groove music. I mean, yeah, you hear them in metal and country and other things, but maybe doing it in funk is somewhat of a new sound. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
think it's awesome.
Thanks, man.
But so you said country too? I never heard it was in country actually.
Yeah, you hear them a lot in country music, actually. You hear
Right.
them a lot, in country music and like soundtracks as well. I mean, a lot of those old westerns, the westerns from like the 50s and 60s. There's a lot of baritone guitar in there.
Ah,
Yeah, various other places. It's definitely like a niche instrument. It's a pretty specific sound, but I figured why not use it for what I do, which is funk and rock. So
yeah.
that's
I mean,
that's
it's
how we
awesome,
ended up
man.
there. Yeah.
But so how does that whole like how does a baritone guitar work in terms of like what's the thickest string? Is it like a C or something? I mean, it sounds very low.
Uh, well, I mean, I tune to A for the sixth string. Sometimes I'll drop the A to G. Yeah, and then other times it'll be in B. So anywhere between B and G. And you can play it like a normal guitar. I mean, the fingerings are all the same. It's not an alternate tuning. It's just a dropped tuning. But when you're writing the music, you have to be aware of how the arrangement is going to suit the baritone instrument, because it does take up a lot of space in the mix. And so you have to be pretty careful about how you compose your bass lines and, synth parts and other various components of the song, so that the baritone shines through without necessarily like stepping on everything, because you want the compositions to still have space and breathe and not be so dense that you can't tell what's going on, even though I'm sure there are probably some segments of certain songs that are far too dense than they should be, but whatever.
That's awesome. It's awesome. But yeah, because I was going to ask that, the exact thing you just said. Like, how do you, like in one of the songs, I don't know which one it is, but of those, like Red Dwarf or Magnetar, like, is the guitar the lowest instrument, so to speak, or is the bass still playing in
no,
lower
the bass
register?
is still the lowest. Yeah.
Wow.
And I'll use a regular 4 or 5 string bass, or I have a 6 string bass. It's kind of an interesting thing. It's tuned like a guitar, so E, A, D, G, B, E, just a full octave below where a standard guitar would be. So you can play it just like a regular guitar, but it sounds like a bass. And so some of the quote unquote bass parts on the Baritone Sessions are that instrument. At least on the volume 2, because I didn't have it for volume 1.
Okay.
So yeah.
What was volume 1 then? Wasn't that also baritone?
It was. I didn't call it volume 1 because I didn't know if I was going to do a volume 2. So it's just I refer to it as volume 1, but it's really just called Deep the Baritone Sessions, and it's more of an EP. It's like 7 songs, and that was the one that kind of started the whole journey. I put that out in spring of 2019. So it's a little bit older, but yeah, same concept for that record. It's kind of aggressive funk rock fusion music based around the baritone, so yeah.
But how did you stumble upon the baritone? Like, have you always used the baritone, or what's the story there?
No, not really. I think the first time I ever played one was in a studio, just as like a textural part, because the producer suggested I use one, and I said, all right, cool, but didn't really think much of it. And then we started using them in Snarky Puppy a little bit, and then I just bought one to have as a part of my guitar arsenal for session work. But one afternoon, I was kind of, what was I doing? Well, I was actually writing a song for Snarky Puppy, and decided I would try it on baritone, because the band had kind of grown fond of the baritone sound, but we hadn't really done anything funky, so to speak, with it. I mean, kind of. There was a song on Ground Up called Minder, which is mostly a rock song, but has kind of like a funky groove in the middle of it. So we were aware of the sound and its power, So I decided I would use it on this one song that I submitted to the band, and we ended up recording it, and it became the song called Jefe, which was a bonus track on Culture Vulture. Yeah, and I just really liked the way that the riff I wrote sounded on baritone. It was funky. Well, it was kind of like a twangy kind of riff, but there were elements of the song that were really funky and groove oriented, and so I realized that, like, this is kind of a cool new thing that I haven't really discovered yet, and that kind of led me on the journey to start writing songs based around it. And it really kind of took off because of social media, because I was making videos of me playing baritone to little programmed backing track jams that I've made, and a lot of those backing track jams became actual songs that ended up on the Baritone Sessions records. So that's kind of how it started, and I think the kind of social media aspect of it, people were pretty surprised because they'd never seen an instrument like that, or they'd never heard it played like that before. And so it made me recognize that, okay, maybe this is kind of a cool thing that I should sort of pursue as part of my sound,
Yeah, it's awesome, man. I mean, I'm glad you discovered it, because it sounds kick-ass. I mean, I think
Cool.
I need
There you
to
go.
get into it myself.
Yeah, there you go. Have at it, man.
But you mentioned something there, like finding something else that can be like an inspiration. Because I just started trying to learn like playing an open E.
Hmm.
First, I thought, oh, let me try B Derek Trucks, but then obviously that's really hard.
Right. Yeah.
But I
Pretty
still
good.
really love the open E tuning, and also because I don't fully understand like the which chord I'm playing it when I play on open E, so everything sounds fresh.
Hmm.
And
Sure.
I don't know if that's something you discovered when you started playing the baritone. I mean, I guess you had more knowledge maybe about what you played and stuff like that, but did it feel like something along those lines, or?
Um, I mean, yeah, I think well, like, like I said before, I mean, the chord shapes are the same. It's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
in a different tuning. So I didn't really think so much about what key the songs were in. I just really was thinking about composition and form and coming up with the coolest riffs that I could find. And what's neat about the baritone is that you take a cool guitar riff and turn it into a
Mm.
baritone, and it's like 3 times as cooler. you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that's fun. And I would kind of mess around with effects a little bit, and for
Mm.
a lot of the songs I'll run the baritone through some kind of an octave pedal, which is just makes like a really huge sound. And so yeah, I guess I don't sometimes I'll pick up a baritone and write on the baritone. Other times I'll pick up a guitar and start writing and then transfer it over to baritone, and see if it makes more sense there. It's just, it's when it works. You get that feeling like, okay, this is going to be a cool baritone song, and then you
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
just kind of keep going with it.
Yeah, man. I mean, I love that you love kick-ass riffs too, man.
Well,
That's what it's all
I mean,
about.
I'm a rock guy, at heart, really. I mean, I love for all the funk and R&B and other things that I do and really love. I mean, I grew up on rock and riffs, so I think, I mean, there's nothing better than a great riff.
Hmm.
I think
Exactly.
so.
But
I'm wearing a
who was
King's
your?
X t-shirt. Talk about riffs.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I don't know their music too well, actually.
Oh, you should.
Yeah,
Everyone should know their music. They're like one of the greatest bands of all time.
I need to check it
Definitely.
out.
Oh yeah.
But so, who else was the inspiration to you, like when it comes to kick-ass riffs?
Um, let's see. I mean, I think probably some of the early. I mean, some of the earliest riffs I heard were, whatever Jimi Hendrix was playing, because he was one of my
Mm.
early guitar influences. Like a riff like the song "Easy Rider." This is a great riff. I love the riffs like Alice in Chains does. I love King's X riffs. I love Eddie Van Halen's riffs. I love Ozzy Osbourne's riffs. I mean, there's some Mountain, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
the James Gang, the Eagles. I mean, like, gosh, Metallica. I mean, there's a million great riffs out there. It's funny you mentioned this. I was doing a rehearsal yesterday with some friends. We put together a band just to start playing, kind of like tribute cover shows, but it's all music from like the 70s and 80s, like Steely Dan and Toto and Hall and Oates
Nice.
and all that great stuff. We call it dad rock, because we're all dads. It's like,
Yeah,
what dads in the 80s used to listen to. Anyway, so after the rehearsal, we had a couple beers and started playing like 90s grunge music, Nirvana and Soundgarden and all these great riffs that we all just remembered from our childhood. And so, yeah, there's a wealth of great riffs out there. So I'm
yeah,
always
man.
trying to find cool new ones that people are doing.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean riffs are awesome, man. I remember I was really late to the game, I think, but Audio Slaves. I don't remember the name of the record now. It might be their
I think it was
second
just called
record.
Audio Slave. Did they make 2 records? Maybe they did.
I think
They had
so.
some
Maybe
great
even three.
riffs. Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah, yeah. But what's his name again? The guitar player, Tom
Tom
Morello.
Morello.
He has some cool
Yeah,
riffs.
totally. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, there was an era in guitar, especially, I mean, there's some great riffs in the 90s,
Hmm.
really good ones. And, I guess Audio Slave maybe is more early 2000s, but I mean,
Yeah.
it's Rage Against the Machine essentially, just with Chris Cornell, so, but I mean, it's a different band, but the riff writing is still Tom Morello. So yeah,
Yeah,
he's
exactly.
incredible.
Yeah, man. But so when it comes to songwriting and stuff, because obviously the baritone sessions and your other stuff is instrumental music
Hmm.
mainly, I believe. I even Snarky Puppy. I mean, I think you guys have some vocal songs with vocals too, but it's most instrumental. So, because I do a lot of instrumental music myself, and do you when you write songs, do you ever think about like, oh, because there's no vocal, I need to, there's got to be something happening each new section, so to speak? Does that ever cross your
Uh,
mind or?
Actually, it does cross my mind, and I try to make sure I don't do it,
Right.
because I think that's one of the pitfalls with instrumental music is that since you don't technically have to be confined to maybe like a pop structure, you can overcompose a song really easily, and to where it becomes almost like 10 songs worth of music in the span of one song. And so, I have to be real conscious about when in songs I introduce new ideas, and if it is going to be a new idea, how does it relate to the idea that happened before that? There's got to be some kind of link somehow, whether it's a tone or a chord progression or a melody or rhythm. There's all different mechanisms you can use to create those links, but it's got to feel complete, And so I do tend to actually stick to a pop form with my
Right.
music. If you really like, I mean, it's pop with extra bits. It's not just totally all verse, chorus, bridge, solo, etc. There's a little bit of extra push and pull there, but in general, it is a pop form. Just because I love pop music, rock music, whatever it is. But I'm not really a singer, and I don't really like to write lyrics, so I use the guitar as my voice. But structurally, I try to keep it somewhat compartmentalized along pop form because I feel like it just works the best for how I want to communicate each song. It's just even if at the very least, so I don't get carried away and
Right.
overcompose, right? And just end up with 1,000 sections that have nothing to do with each other. They might sound cool, but if they're not related, then it's not going to work.
Yeah.
At least to me, that's what I think. So
Yeah, definitely. But do you think that has to do with like a maturity thing when it comes to songwriting?
maybe so. I don't know. I mean, I'm still learning, just like anyone. But with this, I think with guitar players, maybe we kind of have big egos, so we like to be the center of attention all the time. And I think if you can understand that, like, you don't need to show everybody all the cool things you can do on your guitar in every song.
Yeah, yeah.
you know, you can save it. Give it away tastefully, and I think it'll help you focus on writing songs rather than writing like guitar music. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
so I gave up trying to be the fastest, craziest, most technically accomplished guitar player a long time ago. So no
Right,
use
right,
in no use in trying to enter that arms race.
right.
I just want
But
to
I
write
still
some.
saw you.
Uh,
Sorry, go ahead.
I just want to write some cool songs at this point.
Yeah, yeah. Now I saw you actually shredding away on Instagram, like there's some tapping action
Well,
going on.
I mean, I have my moments,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I've studied a lot of different kinds of guitar playing, and I don't know if well, you don't really master anything, but there's definitely certain things I'm better at than others. But I like to kind of dabble in as many different things as I can just for fun. And even if it comes out in my own playing naturally, then that's great. But I like to try to be diverse, I think. But I
Hmm.
wouldn't consider myself a shredder, and because there are some
Right,
real shredders out there. I mean, real shredders, and I wouldn't put myself in that category at all. So
right, right.
yeah.
But I mean, did you come up like playing gospel? Was that how you started out ish? I mean,
No, I got into that in college actually.
right.
So I guess probably a little late. I mean, compared to cats who did grow up playing gospel. I mean, it's like another language on the instrument that you need to learn. And so I got into it in college. But like I said, man, my earliest influences were like Jimi Hendrix and grunge. So,
Yeah, yeah.
and then, you know, from there it developed into all different other sorts of things. But yeah, sometimes I wish I had started playing gospel music at 4.
Yeah, yeah,
You know,
exactly.
like some of these guys, but I'm a
Well,
little
yeah,
lazy.
because what is it about gospel players? Because they're always kick-ass players. Like how the hell? I mean, is this what's going on in
Yeah.
those churches, man? I
Well, I
mean,
mean,
sign me
it's
up.
just a lot of music, and it's a lot of music, and it's a something that's integral to that form of worship, and it's passed down, you know, from family member to family member. You know, most of my friends who grew up doing that, a lot of other people in their family play also, and so it's a community thing there. And yeah, they start really young. I mean, some of my friends who are drummers, their first memory of learning drums was like their uncle just handing them a pair of drumsticks when they're 5 years old and saying like, okay, you're playing for service today, you know, and they just have to
Yeah, yeah.
figure it out. And so it's kind of like getting thrown into a pool and treading water till you learn how to swim. You know, you just get in there immediately and learn how to do it. So when you start that young, I mean, yeah, the sky's the limit for what you can do. And it's just a really cool language of guitar. I mean, there's roots in soul and R&B, and then some jazz in there too. And but it's all has this great kind of groove and pocket that you really only find in gospel. So yeah.
What do you mean by language when it comes to the guitar, for example? Like, how is it different from, let's say, grunge?
Sure, but it's completely different. I mean, it's like one person speaking Japanese and another person speaking
Right,
Spanish. I
right.
mean, it's an entirely different language that has its own vocabulary, its own set of words and phrases and nuances and slang, you know.
Right, right.
And I wouldn't say, you know, I guess the way I look at styles is I don't really look at one as being better or more advanced than another. I mean, because you wouldn't say that Spanish is better or more advanced than Swahili. You know what I'm saying? They're both incredibly different, beautiful languages with their own thing. So I look at music the same way, especially when I'm trying to learn a style. I mean, I find that I need to kind of immerse myself in it to the best of my abilities, just as you would a language. You know, if you want to learn Spanish, move to Spain or Mexico
Yeah,
or
yeah, yeah.
something. You know,
Yeah.
get into a situation where you're forced to speak it. And I think with music, it's exactly the same way. If you want to really learn gospel music, go play at a gospel church. Like, don't look at YouTube or, you know, a book or whatever. I mean, that's good stuff. You can learn a lot, but you won't really make the breakthroughs you need until you are actually experiencing it firsthand with people who grew up doing it. So I wouldn't consider myself an A-list gospel player at all, but I at least I had the opportunity to play in those churches and learn from those players that really do it. So, you know.
And what did you learn from them? Like, what was if your experience, like, first coming into the gospel scene? Then, like, was it like trying to swim? But
A little bit, yeah. I mean, I definitely didn't know as many chords when I first started. But you know, having to play all that complex harmony and follow piano players, I mean, taught me a ton about harmony and chord voicings and then pocket, of course. Like, I always kind of had good feel, I think, just inherently, kind of. So I could kind of get away with, you know, because I did play a lot of funk and blues and stuff like that when I was younger, and so I kind of had an idea on how to fit into the pocket, but I definitely developed it a lot more when I started playing with gospel artists. But the big thing for me was harmony. You know, excuse me, with the chords and stuff like that. So, because I think a lot of it comes from organ players and piano players and stuff like that, maybe less from guitar players. So.
because I always thought maybe like if you play in a gospel church, for example, that is a lot of improv as well. But you're saying there's also a lot of theory to learn, like
Well,
books,
I
so to
mean,
speak, for lack of a better word.
you can put the theory behind any of it. You know, it's. I guess I would say. I mean, yeah, there are elements of improvisation, definitely, in situations where you're vamping or playing behind a pastor or something like that. But yeah, I mean, just the wealth of kind of chords and chord movements and stuff like that is really, really deep in that world. And you can definitely kind of try to quantify it in a theoretical, scientific way if that's the way your brain works, or you can just hear it. You know, a lot of the players that I studied or played with just hear it because they've been hearing it their whole lives.
Yeah.
Which is pretty awesome. So I'm kind of in between.
Yeah.
I can hear a lot of it, but some of it I have to kind of, okay, so this is melodic minor now. Okay, now we're, and sort of look at it that way. But sort of, that's because that's sort of how I learned. I'm like kind of half self-taught, half academically taught. So,
right.
Yeah.
So when you say like it's deep, do you mean what you mentioned now? Like it goes from major to minor, but deeper than that, obviously. But
Well,
is that
I
what
just
you?
mean, deep as in like the types of chords used. It's a lot of it is jazz related. I mean, there's a big element of kind of jazz harmony and how gospel works. A lot of, like you said, minor chords, minor 7 chords, dominant chords, lot of altered chords, a lot of like slash chords, where the bass is in one place and the triad is in another place. And so, which is, I think, comes from the piano stuff, a lot of key changes. It's just, it's involved stuff, man.
Yeah.
you know, yeah,
Yeah, it's a really fascinating style of music.
totally.
Like I wish I could play it, but yeah, I've been fortunate to work with some players, and usually drummers are just next level for some reason. I
Sure.
don't know what it is with gospel drummers, but they're next level.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. But when it comes to like going back to songwriting
Mhm.
and developing that craft and for your own records, what has been your approach to develop your own songwriting and figuring out what a good song is for you?
That's a good question. Um, I think when I'm working on something, whatever that initial spark that kind of started off the song, and this could be, a riff that I play into my iPhone or something, and then 6 months later I go listen to it. If I can kind of try to put myself in that headspace of where I was, what this riff it feels like identifies with, what does it mean in a non-musical sense, if I can associate it with something like that, I can keep that feeling going through the whole song, then I feel like I've got a composition that's working, you know? Um,
So can you explain that a bit in more detail, maybe? I'm not sure if I really
sure.
understand
I'll
it.
try to talk about it without it sounding too esoteric, but
That's all right.
yeah, I'll try to think of a song, that I wrote. Well, I was just playing one today, actually. I was doing a little video demo for, Paul Reed Smith and was doing a song called Red Racer, which is a tune I did. Is kind of an older song, 2016, I think is when I put it out. And I had the idea, I wanted to write a song that kind of reminded me of certain scenes in like big budget action movie disaster films. And sort of like I wanted to kind of develop a character and have him kind of go through these different situations and where there's like, a monster and all these kinds of things. And so that's basically the way that the song works is it's a shuffle. It's like kind of a mid-tempo shuffle with this like this really heavy halftime chorus. And the idea was that I always noticed in these, big budget action disaster movies, there's always like a scene where there's like a guy, he's a really slick guy, he's driving a sports car, maybe he's like a lawyer or something, and he's like on his cell phone, like cutting people off and like making deals and firing people. And he's just kind of a jerk,
Yeah.
And he's speeding around and he's real cool and slick. And then all of a sudden the asteroid or the robot or whatever it is comes and just stomps on his car, and so it's like a little bit of a comedic thing. So I wanted to put that into song. And so that was how that tune in particular came about. And so
Right.
if you go listen to that song with that in mind, you'd be like, okay, this makes sense.
Yeah, I will. What
Yeah.
was this song called again? Red Racer?
Red Racer. Yeah.
Right. I
So,
will listen to it
so
after this.
stuff like that, if I can put that into music, I will. And sometimes it turns out to be a pretty cool thing.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. It reminds me slightly about if you're familiar with Sean Everett, like the mixing engineer.
I'm not actually, but
Right. He worked on like now I just blanked on the name. Alabama Shakes and
Oh, okay, cool.
The War on Drugs, for
All right.
example. And he likes to mix like watching like like a clip from a film, for example. Like if the artist says, "Oh, this is what I imagine my music sounding like this clip, for example," and it sounds similar to
Cool.
what you do a bit, you know, like
Yeah, I
finding some sort of a maybe storyline ish and
sure.
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think finding non-musical devices to help your music can always be cool because at least there's something tangible that you can direct the musical energy towards. Now, whether or not your listener picks up on the energy is it's kind of irrelevant actually, especially with instrumental music, because if you didn't know that that's what Red Racer was about, you may formulate an entirely different conclusion, which is great. That's totally
Yeah.
fine. That's kind of the beauty of instrumental music, So, but for
Yeah.
me, if
Exactly.
I like to kind of tie everything in with something non-musical if I can.
Right. That's really interesting, man. I mean, do you do anything else in terms of constructing songs beyond what you just said?
Um, well, I guess maybe the way that I put them together, I try to have as many kind of sonic choices involved during the kind of like initial demo / writing process. So I'll always have a keyboard up in a bass and a couple guitars, and so I can sort of look at the whole production and think about all the aspects coming together while the song is coming together. I don't just like write the whole thing on guitar necessarily and just then build it around there. I kind of write all the parts simultaneously because I think in that respect sometimes you might pick up a bass and do something on the bass that you wouldn't have thought of on the guitar, and all of a sudden now you're at the point in the song that now you've created the next section that needs to happen, and it happened because you were playing a bass, not because you were playing a guitar.
Mm-hmm.
And I think maybe composing that way maybe can help it not sound like a guitar song all the time, because you're thinking more in terms of the whole arrangement and all the instruments involved. If you want to have multiple instruments on your track, of course it could just be guitar, which is fine.
Yeah, yeah.
you know, but I
So
like
what?
bass drum.
Yeah, yeah. But so what do you do if you're stuck and you're just like, I don't know what the hell should come in this next section? Are you one of those people who like take a break, or are you one of those people who
Mm.
just sits down until something comes out of you?
Most of the time I'll take a break. But
Mm-hmm.
if I can feel like something is about to break through, I'll just keep grinding till it does. Uh, if you're like 75% of the way there, then just get that last 25%. But if it's like 40, then,
Yeah, yeah,
maybe take some time away from it for a second. So,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. That makes sense. And
sure.
yeah, it's fascinating how it can come out in different ways.
Hmm. Yeah.
Like because I used to
Everyone
be
has a
like,
different song process. Yeah,
mm,
sure.
yeah, exactly. Because I used to be like, no, I gotta sit down, for hours until something comes out because I know it's there. But
Hmm.
lately, I've been more like, I'll come back. And that's something I noticed because I was trying to learn like playing piano during the lockdown, and I wasn't so obsessive about it. I was like, okay, let's just learn something each day, and then I noticed that the when I actually took a break is and coming back the next day, I could do some stuff I couldn't do the day before. So I was
Right.
like, oh, that's pretty fascinating.
Yeah. It's amazing what you remember when you stop practicing.
Yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
exactly. But what's your practice routine? I mean, if you're learning a new instrument, let's say, how do you approach that?
Um, well, truth be told, I don't really practice,
Hmm.
just because I don't have time. I'm working on making time to practice, but I think a lot of now, because I'm so deep into the career aspect of doing this, that I try to get practice out of the practical career opportunities that I have. So if it's
Right.
a recording session, for example, and I'm doing it at my house, kind of on my own time, well, not really on my own time, but kind of on my own time, right? I usually have a
Hmm.
deadline, but if I'm able to kind of sit here and obsess over a chord progression for, 2 hours, then I'll do that, to kind of
Right.
like
Right.
use it to practice a set of changes or a groove or something, or And it's cool because then I get to play some really neat stuff for the client, and they think it's great. And then I also get a little bit of practice. Maybe I learn some new chords out of it or something. So I'll use that as practice. Learning new songs for a gig, whatever it is, I'll try to learn more than just the guitar part. Maybe learn the lyrics, the vocals, or something. Just try to make yourself a little bit better of a musician than before you were when you took the opportunity.
Right.
And so, I did a gig for a friend last weekend. He's kind of like a singer-songwriter, Americana rock stuff, really, really cool stuff. And I didn't need to learn all the guitar parts, but I chose to anyway, or, to attempt to. He said, "Hey, man, just play whatever you want. Here's the charts, do your thing." And I said, "Okay, cool." But I listened to the records, and there was some really nice guitar playing on there that the session guy had done. And I was like, "Man, I'm going to learn this stuff. Like, this is great." So I didn't need to do it, but I took it as an opportunity to practice and get some new licks under my belt,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
you look for opportunities like that to get some practice in.
Yeah, for sure. That actually reminds me. I was talking to Michael Palmisano.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you're familiar with
Yeah,
him.
totally.
Yeah, and he was talking about like the importance of learning vocal melodies on the guitar.
Sure.
And because you said you don't only just learn the guitar part, like you learn the lyrics, for example, or the vocals. You said.
Right.
Um, that's something I'm trying to get into too, just to become a better musician myself.
Well, at
So
the at the very least, if you're in a situation where you have to play a solo and you can't think of anything to play the
yeah,
vocal melody. It always works. That's
yeah,
what Kurt Cobain did every time he had a guitar solo. He played the vocal melody, and it was cool.
yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, that's
No,
great
that's
skill.
awesome.
And then
Yeah,
you won't get lost in the song because you can use the lyrics as cues where you go next. So
yeah. That was really cool with what he was talking about too, about like how learning vocal melodies allows you to think outside of just playing the scale up and down, for
right.
example. And it's kind of
Well,
fascinating.
it's vocals and like horn playing, because if you think about it, both of those instruments require breathing, which means you have a limited amount of sounds you can make before you need to take a break, which is just great practice for phrasing, right? Everyone's always talking about phrasing. Well, a phrase is a set of notes that has a beginning and an end, right? The end being kind of an important thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. So if you learn how to stop in all the right places, you come up with
Exactly.
great phrasing, just like a singer would. So
Yeah, totally. But you mentioned like you more focus on the career stuff, if I understood you right. So what does that mean to you to
well,
focus on that?
yeah, sure. Yeah. I'm focused on it in the sense that I have to do it to keep my business running. This is a career thing. Doing a
Yeah, yeah.
podcast, right? Editing a video together, answering emails about flights to something, advancing gear for a backline gear for a performance, making an Instagram video, making a Facebook post that directs people to my website to buy a record, packaging that record, going to the post office to then ship the record. These are all things that I do every day. With I don't even pick up a guitar to do half of them. There are days when I don't play the guitar because I have to keep all the other mechanisms of my career going. It's and I have a manager that helps immensely, but even between the two of us, there's still plenty of work to do just so one gig can happen. Right. So I'm constantly wearing several hats that aren't guitar related hats. So
Right.
like when we wrap up today, I'm going back to edit some video for something I played this morning, but I'll probably actually spend more time trying to make the video not look terrible than I
Yeah.
actually did playing the music.
Yeah,
I got
exactly.
most of the songs done in one or two takes, but the editing, I'm the terrible video editor, so I'm going to be sitting there squinting my eyes, dragging, trying to line up sound waves, and it'll probably still not work.
Yeah, yeah.
But anyway,
No, I know what you mean, but I really love that you saying that, because I think because I mean, which also makes sense. Like usually in the beginning, it's all focused on the music because you get better and stuff like that. But then you realize, oh, I need to actually make a living of this. You know, if you want to.
Sure.
So yeah, I forgot where I was going with that, but I think it's really valuable that you talk about that. So, what else do you do to build your business as a musician? Like how do you keep the money coming in?
Well, I think nowadays, the more things you can do and do for yourself, the better the better chance you'll have at kind of creating opportunities. If you're a guitar player, for example, if you can write songs, if you can make records, if you can produce records, if you can record for other people, if you can teach, if you can demonstrate a piece of gear, if you can make a video, if you can, heck, I don't know, write music for a commercial. I mean, whatever it is, there's so many different things that you can create that you can use to create opportunities for yourself so that you can have a sustainable career. I mean, if you can play on the road, if you can play live, if you can do all that kind of stuff, you can tour or whatever. Everybody that I know that's kind of in my position does all of these things. And I don't know if I think that's just the way that the music business is now. You just have to do a lot of stuff and be prepared to take on a lot of different opportunities. And it's good to have, goals with all these opportunities and have like a certain set of parameters that you want to make your focus. But, when I was young, I just never said no. And now I say no a little bit more, but I still say yes a lot, and because when you're young and you're starting out, like, yeah, you do have more time to practice, but you also have a lot more just general youthful energy to kind of like take on as many things as you can, just to learn what you're good at and what you like to do. But you have to kind of do all that stuff and take risks and fail to sort of figure out how you want your career to go, and the kinds of things you want to make the focus of your career. And so, now in my 30s, I'm focused on my own music, and I'm focused on the couple different other band projects that I have. And then everything else that I do, I still do a lot of session work and stuff like that, but everything else I do sort of somehow is in the realm or the circle of those kinds of focal points, I mean, most of my time lately, at least over the kind of quote unquote 2020 year of doom, whatever, has been focused on my own stuff, so
yeah, I mean, you definitely, like you said, need to wear a lot of hats. Definitely. But so when with the COVID obviously and stuff, there's no gigs for a whole year, I mean, year and a half, I guess. How have you tried to still make a living this year, as an example? Like, did you have to refocus yourself or
a little bit? I mean, I was blessed that I had opportunities still, and getting to a point where there is some income coming from my own music. I mean, not like not loads by any means, but it is something that I can sort of count on, every month. Okay, cool. Like, that'll help a little bit. Nice. But I taught a lot of lessons. I did a lot of session work. I did a lot of like video creation for people. Did a lot of clinics for universities. I did a lot of church like live stream services and stuff like that. But these are things I would do anyway. I don't think I didn't really. There wasn't anything new, actually, which is strange. I guess the only new thing about it was that, like, we had, we were wearing masks and had to be separated, and there was a lot more plexiglass involved in separating people. But I had a lot of session work over this last year. A lot of people were home, so they wanted to make records, and so they called me to make records, which is, again, something that I do anyway. And I did a lot of gear demo stuff. Something just crash. Cat probably knocked
Some,
something. I don't know if you heard that, but
yeah.
oh, you know what that might have been? Our refrigerator is like going on the fritz, and I think that may have been the ice tray.
Right.
Yeah, it's been a weird week. Gonna have to repair the old refrigerator this week, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, I did a lot of that over the
Um,
pandemic too, working fixing up our house.
right. That's good. But so, if someone comes to you and say, "Hey, Mark, can you play on my song?" How do you value yourself in a situation like that? Like how, like in terms of like pricing yourself,
Yeah.
what's your approach to that?
I mean, I have a general set rate that I do, but it's all flexible and kind of depends on how many songs, what kind of songs are they, how many guitar parts are you envisioning, what's your budget, where are we recording it. So, I have a general number that kind of gets the conversation started, and then from there it either stays where it is or it changes a little bit, because I understand every project is totally different. And yeah, so that's pretty much how I approach it. Whether do you need me to play on the whole record, or do you just need me to for one song? Am I going to your studio? Are you sending it here? That kind of thing. So is it 7-minute long Fusion Odyssey? That's gonna
Yeah,
take
yeah,
me
yeah.
a really long time to do, and you want 5 different takes of a guitar solo, So
Yeah.
it's all relative to the project.
Yeah, definitely. Now it's interesting to hear, actually.
Mhm.
But so do you tend to ask what the budget is before giving your quotes or range of
No, I
quotes?
usually just give the price and then we go from there. So
Right.
yeah,
That's good. So
yeah.
does anyone ever say, "Oh, you can actually have more than what you quoted"?
um, I, if they I guess if they do, if they're generous, they'll give you that. But most of the time, you wouldn't even know. So that's
Yeah,
why
yeah,
I
yeah.
usually I price it to what I think my time is worth, and what it would what I would feel like I was getting compensated properly for. So
Right.
if it's something that I think is going to take a buttload of time, then I will give them a number that will reflect that. So and
Makes
vice
sense.
versa. So
Yeah. Yeah, it makes total sense. Um, and there's something just shifting conversation
Mhm.
completely because I just saw my question here that I love to ask you about, and that's the song Lingus, right? Snarky Puppy.
Okay.
So there's always been this. I mean, I'm guessing you're familiar with the song, but you know that
Yeah.
syncopated thing, right? In the breakdown, whatever you want to call it.
Uh huh.
I always wonder how the hell do you count that section? Because I always try. Oh, let me see if I can figure out how to count. Where's the one? As an example.
Which part? Which part are you talking about?
Oh, that's the syncopated thing just before the keyboard solo takes off or the synth
Oh,
solo.
like dun dun dun
Yeah,
dun.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
it's in
yeah.
4.
Is it?
Yeah.
That's always the case when I ask
Yeah,
these
that's
questions. I
probably
was
the
like,
easiest riff that we ever had.
really?
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah, this is the E minor scale basically, with the
But why
F.
does it feel so? Why does it feel so strange to me?
I don't know. I mean, it's not, it's not like it's not the Ramones, but it's
Yeah.
yeah, I don't think I ever thought too hard about that one.
That's
There is,
hilarious.
I mean, it's funky and kind of syncopated in kind of a specific way, but yeah, I mean, I think it's in 4. I've been playing it in 4. I hope it's in 4.
Because isn't it how they land the
I mean,
hits,
there
whatever you want
might
to
be
call
some
it?
stuff that's not quite on the downbeat, which is pretty standard for Snarky Puppy fare. So man, I've played that song so many times I don't even think about it anymore. I just
Yeah,
play the
yeah,
riff. So
yeah.
yeah,
That's the place you want to get to.
there you go.
Yeah, man. But Mark, before we wrap up, do you have any like favorite failure that set you up for a later success as a could
Hmm.
be guitar wise, career wise, personal, whatever.
Sure. Probably. Oh gosh. You know what? I probably just block all the failures out of my head. I know that they exist, but I'm so traumatized by them that no, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah, it's funny. It's funny that you asked that. I was actually thinking about this the other day. This was a million years ago, 12 years ago or something. Probably longer than that.
Right.
A friend of mine had asked me to sub for him on a gig, and it was a gig on bass, and
Wow.
it was like a trio. So it was a drummer, this piano player that sang, and then bass. And I'm a decent bass player, but I wasn't really like gigging as a bass player. But my friend knew that I played bass and felt that I could probably handle the gig fine. And we get there, and it's like a dinner set thing, a couple sets or something. And the guy had a songbook. Some of it was like jazz standards. Some of it was kind of like Great American Songbook stuff. So kind of things that I didn't really play all that much because I didn't really spend a whole lot of time playing jazz standards. Certainly not on bass. I mean, I can get my way around them on guitar, okay, but not really on bass. And so we were playing, and obviously I'm not doing a great job, and the guy could kind of tell. And rather than just sort of like owning the fact that I wasn't doing great, I said, well, I'm not really a bass player. And I could see the expression in the guy's face. And I was like, oh my gosh, I should not have said that, because now he's mad at my friend for sending a non-bass player to play bass on his gig. And 2, he's just mad at me for accepting the gig as not really a jazz bass player. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of, it was a million years ago. And but it taught me to like, just do the gig, just fake it till you make it. You know what I mean? Like, get through it, say thank you. Maybe the guy never calls you again. Fine. But you didn't throw anybody under a bus. You didn't throw yourself under a bus. You just had a bad gig, and that was sort of more of a lesson in like personal issues, how to handle business on a gig. And those are the kinds of things you learn when you're young and you say dumb things like what I said.
Right.
So it's good to get that out of the way early and make those mistakes, early. But that was a thing, and so after that, anytime there was a situation where maybe I was in over my head or having a bad gig, I didn't make any excuses. Right. That's the thing. It's just like, yeah, dude, you blew it. Just try again later, but don't make excuses, and definitely don't make excuses that involve other people. Right. It's funny. There's so many things in music that that are not musical that will help you learn in your career or determine what happens in your career. So much of it. What's that?
In which way do you mean?
Well, I just mean so much of it's interpersonal, something like that, like an interaction with the band leader that you've never met. Right. So, yeah, that wasn't fun. No, but I remember going home being like, man, you idiot. Like, why did you do that? And so I just made a point to never, to just be an adult and don't make excuses ever, and so that helped, I think. The learning experience. Yeah.
But so how do you deal with those moments? Maybe not so much now, hopefully, but like back then, like when you were a bit newer to the industry, when you felt something that was a setback, like, were you the person who was like freaked out and were like, oh shit, I'm never going to work again? Or were you more relaxed about it and just thought, oh, something else comes along?
Well, I think it's natural, and you probably should have a little bit of, oh my gosh, they're never going to call me again. Because that means you care. It means you recognize that you have room to grow, that you have stuff you need to work on, that you made a mistake. Then you can do better the next time. If you just are like, oh, whatever, it's their own, they don't get it. That's not a good attitude. I always try to assume responsibility for my actions if it really is my fault. Right. Like as soon as I like the story I just told you, as soon as I said that to that guy, I was like, oh my gosh, that was the stupidest thing I could have possibly said. Right. Yeah. So I immediately understood, like, okay, this guy's probably never going to call me again. Well, all right. I'll own that, I could have been like, well, yeah, because your songs suck. So like, of course I'm not playing, But people do that. It's like they get upset because they didn't get hired or whatever, and they blame the other person. And it's like, well, you probably should put a little bit of on the blame on yourself, even just because you'll learn something that way. So, yeah, I always would kind of look at it as like, all right, where did I screw up, and what can I do better, even if it is this other person's fault mostly. Anyway.
Yeah, that's a good way of handling it.
I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah, but there's so many ways you can get fired from a gig. Like, I know I worked with some people who just didn't want to shut up. They just kept talking about the I don't even know, like the intricacies of the chords happening, and no one, like, I was hired as a sound engineer. Like, that's what I do.
Okay.
And this guy, he never got called back to the band again because no one really knew what he was saying. Yeah, you have all these various reasons.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and there might be a situation where you did absolutely nothing wrong. It's just you weren't a right fit. I mean, like, I got fired, not really fired, but kind of just said we were going in a different direction just because the lead singer just liked the other guitar player better. They were better friends or something. So I was like, all right, nothing. I did the gig the best I could. If I don't have the look or whatever you want, then that's fine. But I understood that. I understood. Okay, well, it's probably something about me that they're not into. But is it something that I can change? No. so I'll keep moving forward.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it can be tricky. Like, I used to play in a function band many years ago. Well, not too many, but yeah, a few years ago. And I always, like, I was playing bass.
Mm-hmm.
For some reason, I could never memorize like all the parts. So there was like a few songs that I just blanked, which is obviously bad.
Yep, I do that on Snarky Puppy gigs in front of thousands of people sometimes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I can't remember the songs, guys.
Right. How do you deal with that when it comes to a section you just blank? What do you do?
Well, I mean, you usually just train wreck and then just wipe yourself off and get it the next night. I mean, thankfully I work in a band where no one is perfect all the time, and our band leader has a lot of grace. Right. So he knows that mistakes are going to be made. I think the only time he ever gets maybe upset is when mistakes are made because people aren't trying or because they're not prepared, not because they just made a mistake. You know what I'm saying? So, and I'm the same way. There's a difference if if I'm leading a band or something and there's a mistake because it's just a human error versus not knowing the song or not wanting to be at the gig or not caring or what, because you can kind of tell the difference. So, but thankfully all the people I work with really only make human mistakes, myself included.
Yeah.
I mess up my own songs all the time.
Right.
But believe me, I'm trying. I want to be there.
Yeah, exactly. But that's also somehow some music is part of doing mistakes too. Sometimes something beautiful can happen, I guess.
I'm a firm believer in that. Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
No, it's interesting, man. But yeah, Mark, I don't want to take your whole day here.
Oh, all good, buddy. Yeah, it's good talking to you.
Yeah, you too, man.
Where are you based out of?
Thank you. So we used to live in London. Now we moved to Leeds.
Cool.
In the UK. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. Well, right on, dude.
I guess you guys have been here playing a few
times.
Oh
yeah. Right? Oh yeah. Been in Leeds many times. London. Well, I've been in the UK a lot. Yeah. It's fun. I dig it over there.
Yeah, there's a big scene of like Snarky Puppy esque bands.
Cool.
In London.
There's just a great music scene everywhere in that country. Yeah. Scotland and Ireland, Wales, all the whole island unit. You guys got all kinds of cool stuff up there.
But yeah, exactly, man.
Yeah, man.
That is cool. But yeah, Mark, thank you again.
Really my pleasure, Nick. All right, buddy. Awesome. Talk to you later.
Thank you, Mark, for coming on. It was a real pleasure talking to you, and I hope you, the listener or watcher, enjoyed it as well. Again, check out Mark's music. Check out Snarky Puppy if you haven't. And if you want exclusive access to interviews before the public, sign up to the Audio Tribe email list. There's a link to that in the description below. It's free if I didn't already said that. Enter your name and email address and you have joined. And please subscribe to the YouTube channel, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify, wherever you are listening or watching the show. Your support really helps and allows the show to we can get some cooler guests on and stuff like that. So I really appreciate your support. But that's it for this week. Awesome to have you here as always. We'll see you next week again. So take care and see you soon.